Peter asked what happened, and Mary Jane said that Norman Osborn killed his son, destroying everything. She didn't know the full story or why there was military equipment, but Peter got up from his bed telling Mary Jane that she needed to hear this. He revealed that Harry knew something was up and that he was told, but Harry said not to tell you, and MJ couldn't even believe it. Mary Jane screamed at Peter, saying that you could have stopped this from happening, but Peter yelled, saying that they both didn't know how this was going to end up. Mary Jane couldn't even believe it, and Peter tried to stop her from leaving, but Mary Jane swung out of the building. The timeline is forever changed. Harry is gone. Mary Jane blames Peter and herself for the death of Harry Osborn, and now the world and the board members know Norman is the Green Goblin. In the morning, a Daily Bugle paper print would be revealed with a picture of the burned down house and Norman Osborn's face, revealing that he was plotting for terrorism, and now that there's an arrest warrant for him dead or alive. Norman used the rest of his money getting an old abandoned warehouse, and it was the same warehouse where he died in the original timeline. Mary Jane and Peter would go to Harry's funeral, and it was raining and thundering. Peter would fully recover, and he talked out loud, saying Harry saved him from the bullet and that he wished he could have been there to save him as well. MJ and Peter would forgive each other at the funeral, and Peter asked MJ what was she going to do now and if she was going to be going after Norman Osborn. She didn't know what to say or what to think, but she thought she wanted to get her revenge, and she wanted to kill Norman Osborn for what he did to Harry. MJ said that once she finds him, he's going to die, and Peter tried warning her that just because you can kill somebody with your powers doesn't give you the right to do that. Mary Jane brushed it off, saying that it was going to be okay and that she wasn't going to turn into some kind of criminal, and she yelled at Peter, saying what was she supposed to do, let him run and leave? And Peter asked MJ if they could get off the subject, and Mary Jane asked what was he going to be doing, and Peter said he needed to find a job and that he was going to be going to the Daily Bugle soon if they wanted to hire him. She asked why he was going to be going there, and he just explained that he needed a living now and that he was going to be on his own in New York City, so if he's going to find a job, it's going to have to be something where he can make easy money. It would make sense for MJ, and she would agree. They parted ways at the funeral, and in the distance, Norman Osborn was there with a black trench coat and hat. He started smiling, knowing that he was going to have his revenge, and he was going to destroy Alchemax, even if it meant he couldn't have the company back again. Peter went to the Daily Bugle, giving shots to J. Jonah Jameson of Spider-Woman. He was shocked when he saw the photos, and he didn't know what to say. Peter asked for a job at the Daily Bugle, and J. Jonah Jameson said that these photos were garbage, and he said that he could only give him $25 for all of them. Peter would agree, and he would take the money. He started walking in the hallway, seeing Betty Brant. He smiled at her, and he took the cash, and he could hear a loud noise. It would be screaming. Loud screams could be heard, and it was Green Goblin. He smashed into the Daily Bugle building, and he picked up J. Jonah Jameson in front of everyone, demanding to print a retraction about Norman Osborn, and he explained that he killed Norman Osborn and his son Harry was weak and that he killed him. J. Jonah Jameson tried saying that he didn't believe that crap, and Green Goblin laughed, saying believe in this, and he threw him out of the window. He started screaming for help, and Spider-Woman in time would grab him, throwing him back into the Daily Bugle. She looked at Green Goblin, and Goblin started laughing, using his glider to shoot bombs at her. She tried dodging the attacks, and Peter looked to see Mary Jane get blown up from the bombs, and he screamed, telling everybody to look out. Spider-Woman started free falling, and Green Goblin caught her in the air, but she tried punching him. He used green smoke, and she would be knocked out, and things were starting to go blurry and black. Mary Jane woke up, and things were blurry. Green Goblin started talking, laughing at her. She could hardly move, and he explained that everything was going to be fine, but if she tries anything stupid, her friend Peter was going to burn with his family. Mary Jane saw that her mask was missing, and Green Goblin threw out the offer, explaining that she was going to be a great asset for his plan if they're going to be working together. He thought that he had to take the city over and things are going to start to change, but he needed her to do that. Mary Jane told Norman that he can burn and die, and he started laughing, telling her that the city would betray her just like how they betrayed him. And Norman told Mary Jane that he was going to bring good things with Oscorp, but the real evil people are now taking over. He said to Mary Jane that together they could burn down Alchemax and figure out the truth behind what is going on. Mary Jane asked what the truth is, and Green Goblin took his mask off, revealing that he was indeed Norman Osborn. Mary Jane tried making a fist, getting a ton of rushed emotions, and Norman explained that they were creating things that were not imaginable. Norman said, "How do you think you got your powers?" and he started laughing at Mary Jane. Mary Jane yelled at Norman, saying that he was nuts, and Norman would put his mask back on, jumping on the glider, telling her to think about the offer. Mary Jane slowly got back up, looking around, and she could see that her mask was near a vent. She would pick it back up, putting it on, and she needed to tell Peter everything that was happening, building before it was too late. She needed to make sure him and his family were safe. Mary Jane swung back to her place, seeing a note on it, and it said the government was going to be taking her home over soon if she doesn't start paying her bills. She's been caught up in her spider life that she doesn't even have time to be Mary Jane for one day. Peter could see her, and he opened the door and he ran outside, almost being out of breath, and he asked her if she was alright. Mary Jane said that she talked to Norman Osborn and that he wanted her on his side. She said that she couldn't fight him and that she was powerless. Peter asked if she was okay, and she said yes, but there wasn't enough time. Mary Jane told Peter that Norman said that he wanted him dead and all of his family dead. Peter was in shock hearing about this, and MJ said this is why she has no time for herself. A killer was on the loose and that can strike at any point in time. She needed to make sure that everyone was safe, and Peter said to her to be careful, and she smiled at him. She told Peter that things were going to be okay and that they were going to be getting through this soon. We cut to the next day, and it was the Daily Bugle. It was on fire and it was burning like crazy. MJ swung in, kicking glass in the Bugle, and she could see dead employees on the ground not moving. She saw J. Jonah Jameson unconscious, and he wasn't moving either. She ran in for his aid, but a laugh would echo in the room. Mary Jane yelled, telling the Goblin to show himself, and Norman would hover over her. She would turn around seeing Norman. He yelled, asking her, what about the offer? Was she in or was she out? Mary Jane yelled, saying that he was the one that was going to be out soon. And Green Goblin laughed, saying wrong answer, and he threw pumpkin bomb knives, and she dodged the knives, and she used her webs, hitting Green Goblin in the chest. He fell from the building screaming, and she knew that she couldn't go after him. She needed to save the people in the burning building, and Mary Jane ran, seeing J. Jonah Jameson knocked out, and she quickly grabbed him and the building would blow up. There were still people in the building, and she was worried about the Green Goblin, but it was too late. He ended up escaping. She saved everybody in the burning building, and people started clapping. She knew that this needed to end, and Mary Jane went back home swinging, but her hands were all bloody. It was from all of the pumpkin bomb knives, and it was everywhere. Uncle Ben, Peter, and Aunt May would still have their Thanksgiving dinner, and it was nighttime. They invited Mary Jane over, but she didn't end up showing up. She started swinging, crying, knowing that her superhero life was too hard, and now Norman knows who she is. She didn't know what to do, and she let the rain hit her. She swung to a building looking at the city. She remembered that Peter wanted her over for dinner, but it was too late. She thought that she needed to see him and see if he was alright. Green Goblin knew that it was over and that he was going to have his revenge somehow. He went with his glider to the Parker residence house, smashing into the home. Uncle Ben took Aunt May and tried running, and Green Goblin started laughing and grabbed Peter. Uncle Ben would take a baseball bat, yelling at Green Goblin, but Green Goblin caught it in time, throwing him to the ground. Mary Jane would be in the distance, about to go home and see Peter, but there would be smoke in the sky and it couldn't be. It was the Green Goblin, and he had Peter Parker. Peter was screaming for help, and Mary Jane would follow them. She got into her costume quickly, swinging. Norman went to the bridge like the original timeline, throwing Peter on the ground, and he would scream in pain because of the bullet wound and how he recovered. He started blowing up the bridge, and MJ swung there, looking at what was happening. She could see Green Goblin, and he had the children in one hand and Peter by the neck. He yelled at MJ, telling her that she should have joined him, and now he was going to put an end to Spider-Woman once and for all. He said, make your final choice or somebody's going to die here. Peter told her not to give in, but what choice did she have? She needed to join him, and only then could she kill him. But she then remembered what Harry and Peter said about being a hero and all of the risks that it would take. Her final test was here, and she told Norman to burn in hell, and Norman started laughing like crazy. Peter punched Green Goblin in the face, and Green Goblin dropped him. He started screaming, and MJ ran down below, jumping off the bridge, grabbing him. She grabbed him and the kids, but Norman wasn't showing any mercy this time. He used his glider to cut MJ's webs up. Peter fell into the water, screaming MJ's name, and she yelled for Peter, but she got speared in the air, losing her grip with the kids. MJ used her webs, catching Green Goblin, kicking him in the face, and she jumped on his chest in the air, doing a front flip, catching the wire that had the kids on it. She tied it up to the bridge with webs. The door broke open, and kids started jumping off onto the boat. She used all of her strength, but a pumpkin bomb from midair blew up, and Norman grabbed her by the hair, throwing her. She started falling, looking around, and things were starting to black out. She would hit her back off of a warehouse, crashing into it. She fell into a brick wall, and it cracked, smashing onto her neck, and she was pinned to the ground. Norman landed his glider, saying that he tried his best to be a good person, but now he changed his mind. He was going to kill her, Peter, with his family, and destroy Alchemax, all in the process. Mary Jane could only hear Norman talking. She couldn't even do anything. She couldn't see. She couldn't break free. It was too late for this. She tried using all of her strength, but she started getting flashbacks of Harry dying and Peter getting shot and all of the pain that Spider-Woman has caused her friends. She needed to end all of this once and for all. all. She screamed, using all of her strength to break free, and she saw Norman looking at her. She looked around, seeing gliders, pumpkin bombs, everything. It was all here, and she knew it needed to end here right now. Green Goblin asked Mary Jane to help her defeat Alchemax, and that there were bigger things happening here. She asked what things, and Norman said, your friend Peter, his father, is creating a gateway. They took everything from me. Quest Aerospace will soon have control over all of my tech, and Mary Jane didn't know what he meant about a gateway, but something seemed off. Norman told her that he needed to keep control not only for his company, but for the entire city. He was trying to do good, but after a few bad business moves, everything started falling apart. He offered his hand, pleading with Mary Jane, telling her that together they could destroy everything and create a new one, but she remembered all of the bad things that he did with the bugle, him wanting to kill people, and Mary Jane thought she wasn't going to be consumed by lies anymore. She took a step forward, but Norman Osborn, he started screaming in pain as his eyes went from green to red. He yelled and did a massive scream echoing in the room. He transformed into the ultimate Green Goblin. He grabbed Mary Jane by the shoulder and smashed her into the ground, but she used her webs, pulling his glider towards him, and he looked in absolute shock. The knife slammed into his gut, and he laughed, screaming in pain. Mary Jane saw that he was trying to move the glider, and she started swinging out of the abandoned warehouse, but it blew up, and she started to black out. There would be rubble everywhere, and she started crawling, trying to get to her feet. It was over. The Green Goblin was defeated, and she tried saving the city. She got up, looking around, coughing, and there was nothing left but fire, rubble, and debris. She didn't know what to think, and Norman transformed into this creature. She didn't know what it was or what to do. It was his last-ditch effort for his plan, but it didn't work. MJ yelled Peter's name, knowing that he fell into the water, and she started swinging back as fast as she could to the bridge, asking questions if Peter Parker was saved and if they did end up getting towards him. The old man on the boat told Mary Jane they searched everywhere for the kid, but they couldn't find him. They said the current in the water must have pulled him in, and that he's probably already dead. There would be a funeral for Peter Parker and missing signs for him. Uncle Ben and Aunt May were extremely sad for what happened, and they couldn't even believe that the Green Goblin killed him. There would be no closure for him, and Mary Jane went to the funeral crying, seeing Peter's grave and Harry's grave. Both of her best friends were now dead, or were they? She would do one final swing, swinging to the church, seeing lightning in the sky and rain. She knew she needed to go to Alchemax to finish this once and for all. She needed to get answers, and she didn't know where to look, but she had to. She had to find something, and she had to find what they were creating. Board members from Alchemax got into an SUV driving from the bridge, and they could see Peter Parker on the shoreline. People in the suits got out of the car, and out would come Peter Parker's father, Richard Parker. They would go up to Peter Parker, and they would knock him out, throwing him into the SUV, and they started driving off to Alchemax. They would bring one of the smartest kids into the company, and they would explain to him that it was going to be okay, and Peter would see Harry Osborn in a business suit with Otto Octavius. He couldn't even believe it, and he didn't know what to do. And that's where we're going to end. What if Mary Jane got bit by the spider in Spider-Man 2002? We're taking a completely different direction to the storyline, so I do hope you guys really enjoy. We're going to be connecting this to something else, so this is going to be really interesting, but I do want to say thank you all for the amazing support with this fan fiction. It was probably like one of the most difficult fan fictions that I've ever done, but anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys in the next fan fiction. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in, and have an amazing day.